for attending the meeting, and this is the protocols to be followed during this remote meeting. Please note that the meeting is being broadcast live on YouTube and a recording will be made available for public viewing following the meeting. Can members please mute their microphones throughout the meeting when not speaking? This is important since it helps ensure the quality of the audio for all present. Your microphone should be switched on when invited to speak and switched off when you've finished speaking. Please use the raise hand button to indicate that you wish to speak at any point. Can I ask officers to introduce themselves by confirming their name and role before speaking for the first time on any item? If any members lose connection or have technical issues during the meeting, please alert the clerk as soon as possible, either using the chat function within the meeting or by email or phone. I'll now ask the clerk to carry out a roll call of elected members participating in today's meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Danny Gibson.
Present.
Councillor Douglas Dodds.
Present.
Councillor Graham Houston. Don't think he's here. Councillor Alistair Tolmash.
Yes, present. Thank you.
That's 3 of the 4 members present, Councillor Gibson.
Okay, thank you. So we're quorate. Does anyone know if Graham's coming or struggling technology-wise or anything, or no intel there?
No.
Okay, well, we'll leave it be. I'm sure he would have alerted us if there was an issue. No declarations of interest under item 2. I probably should just point out for transparency, I'm a member of the GMB trade union. It's a registrable interest rather than a declarable one, but just for transparency to mention it. Item 3, no urgent business from myself. So item 4 is the minutes. Can I ask if members are content to agree the minutes, please?
Agree.
Agreed. Thank you very much. And I'll take us to item 5, which is the health and safety update, please.
Hi, thanks, Chair. Norman MacLeod, Health and Safety Team Leader, Stirling Council. I'll just take you through the paper, Chair. So on the first point, that risk assessments continue to be very much a focus as we progress through the pandemic for obvious reasons, because albeit the changes are not coming as thick and fast as they were at the height of the pandemic. We're at quite a critical phase now where we're moving through that process. We're maturing any assessments that have been developed, particularly around COVID through the pandemic, but also getting that focus on service level assessments and making sure those are up to speed and onto the SharePoint tile, so that there has been a lot of work being carried out in that, Chair, and that continues because, as we know, these assessments are live, living, breathing documents, and will need to change as and when, whether we have incidents or new pieces of machinery and so forth. So that's progressing really well. It's continual work, and I'll continue to report on that at future panel meetings, but there's been quite a lot of input, again, via the trade union colleagues on this call as well, and that's very much valued, and appreciate the support with service level risk assessments around that as well. On the COVID spot checks, we've not had any more since the last panel meeting. I think it was December or November from the HSE. However, the HSE have still intimated that they will continue to carry out these nationally. Now, whatever HSE deem appropriate and how they're going to carry that out as we progress through 2022, we'll keep an eye on that and we'll align to what they're looking for as well. But over and above that, we do have an internal, what we're calling our own internal spot check programme for COVID secure controls to make sure those are maintained across our many workplaces across council, and that will continue. My health and safety team are going out on a weekly basis with a focus very much on the front-facing buildings where we've got a lot of, I say a lot, we've got essential staff operating out of those and continue to operate out of those through the pandemic. But those spot checks are very much, we're gathering great intelligence around those, and it's given us that benefit of getting into the workplace in a managed way, making sure that those spot checks are highlighting any, and it's not so much weaknesses, just any wee points that we think, right, we need to just touch up on that and pick up on that, and very much have that front-facing conversation with people on the ground as opposed to just putting out emails. And that's, we're getting good benefit out of that because, one, we're getting that chance to engage with staff safely, but also just making sure that we're maintaining those key controls. So if the HSE do come calling as they come in their unannounced spot checks, we'll be in a very good footing to staff will be aware of it. Staff will be prepared for any questions that may come from HSE. So we're on the front foot as a council, should the checks arrive again from the HSE. So that's going well, and that's progressing every month and every week. But we've got a programme out there on a quarterly basis. I send it out to the trade unions as well. And again, trade union colleagues support us where they're available to come out and engage with their members during those spot checks as well. So it's very much a supportive approach in that. It's not about going around with a big banner and saying you've not got your COVID checks up to speed, where there are, and they are generally up to speed. If they're not, we just work through that with the service and work around the reasons as to what maybe happened. But nothing really huge coming out of those. It's very much business as usual, but making sure we don't relax that mindset around those COVID spot checks, because as we know, the virus is still with us. Regardless of what you hear in the media and so forth, it's very much a focus for us still, certainly in health and safety and at management level across council. So that continues. Improvement plans again are maturing well. We launched those last year on that new format within an electronic format, and the services continue to update, and I report on those to the Operational Governance Board. And again, we look at the red, amber and green aspects, those RAGs as we talk about, and make sure services are populating those as we're going forward. And they are, and health and safety team engage at health and safety team meetings across those various services to input into those improvement plans. And as per the action of the last panel, trade union colleagues have now got access to those improvement plans, so they can help input and build upon the good work that's getting done by services around those. Again, it stands us in good stead should something go amiss or something go wrong within the workplace. We've got good audit trail and good evidence to present to any regulator, whether it's HSE, SEPA or anyone else, around the health and safety improvements that we're continuing to make as we progress through not just the pandemic, just health and safety in general, and some of the good practice that's happening around there. It's a good mechanism to capture that information. And moving on to the health and safety policy, as we know, that got approved at F&E committee in November. We're just at the point we're going to be launching in March, April time, relaunching the existing policy still there, but the updated one with some supporting materials as explained in the paper will be going out formally across council in March and April. I'm just completing off some of the guidance material to help support services deliver that key information across their service teams, so everybody understands what part they've got to play around health and safety and making that just part of their day-to-day activities in the workplace. So that policy and the guidance will get launched next month into April. The loan working system, again, the training status has vastly improved, and we're just picking up loose ends around the training status. That's around people that have been absent or off on maternity leave or whatever, or sickness. So we're catching those members of the loan working system. And the focus very much now turning towards getting that usage percentage on the rise, and it is on the rise, as you can see from the last time we jumped to 4% rise, albeit not huge. We still jumped, and it's going in the right direction. And again, health and safety, we continue to support services, and if there's any wee foibles around when it should be used and how it should be used, we're mapping those through with service end users to make sure that they are using it when they need to use it when they're out in the field, because it is an aid there for their actual safety when they're out in the field, so to speak. The incident summary, you'll see there, I've just very much put a snapshot in around what it was in 2021 against the 2020 incidents, and a lot of it kind of centres around the COVID for obvious reasons, and the exponential rise of COVID cases a lot around 2021 as opposed to 2020. But again, that mirrors the national picture, as we all know, going through, and then with the Omicron variant becoming very much a focus as well, and that pushed the numbers up again. But again, there's some positive aspects coming out of the incident reporting, in the sense that near-miss reporting has improved, and getting that near-miss reporting on the rise is much better than actually waiting until the incident happens. We've actually got a bit of intelligence around, okay, it didn't result in something or somebody getting injured this time, what can we do to then avoid that happening again? So that was pleasing to see over 2021. And I don't know if it's a societal thing or because of the pandemic, or it's just the way the country's moving, but there is a rise on verbal and physical abuse towards staff. Now, that takes a range of forms across different social and service areas. But again, it remains a focus for management teams in those areas to ensure that we've got the right mechanisms in place to support any staff who are being verbally or physically abused as part of their work. We don't come to work to get that. But again, it's how we manage that and support staff, and that's very much happening with management teams. So that's certainly one, and it's being focused, and we do discuss that in other forums out with this panel meeting, and that will remain the case as we progress through 2022. And finally, just the last bit was around the signage. We have got bucket signage that is coming. I believe that got ordered recently, and that'll be coming across. And again, it's a wee bit like the spot checks. It just keeps reinforcing those key simple messages around COVID, you know, wash your hands, wear your mask where you need to. Those key aspects, ventilation, you know, if you're meeting, and you'll have been conscious of that yourself, Councillor, up in Old Viewforth today, going back into the workplace for a while, those key controls remain in place, and it's keeping them in place when people are conducting meetings and coming into the workplace as we progress through 2022. So that's the kind of whistle-stop tour of the paper. I'm happy to take any questions, should anybody have anything.
Thank you very much, Norman. A couple of hands up there. Alistair first, and then Douglas, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've got the couple of points. On page 8, okay, the 2.8, the Scottish Government risk assessment tool.
Yeah.
There may be people who've now got along, okay, the COVID, and there's a discussion on what that is. Does the council have the knowledge of this and what that would mean for staff? So that's my first question.
Just to answer that point, yes, certainly HR colleagues support service areas with getting, what would you call them, personal risk assessments in place around people who have got vulnerabilities in the workplace. So anybody returning that's had COVID, or anybody that's got a vulnerable, you know, underlying health condition or a disability, that's certainly a focus for HR and health and safety colleagues when we're going to service level meetings. That COVID, what would they call it? The COVID assessment is really around informing those individual risk assessments where they exist, so that if it comes out as quite a high or a very high potentially, you know, if somebody, you know, they do that calculation online, we've got guidance in place to point staff towards that, and it is a standing agenda point in health and safety meetings. They might already have those coping mechanisms in place for individual members of staff, but where they're not, maybe, and this flags it up, that there's maybe something additional has to be done, or they're maybe returning into the workplace, having been away from it for a while. We are very much aware of that, and very, very much building upon that intelligence and making sure if there are any gaps even, those get filled to make sure staff have got that. But that tool is very much part of a kind of wider set of tools to make sure that staff have got the right mechanisms around them to support them in the workplace, Councillor.
Okay, thank you for that. And the other thing, one of the other two things, one is the Councillor the Gibson just said he just returned after being out of the building for 2 years nearly.
Yep.
Is there such a thing as an induction for staff going back to buildings? Because if I worked in the Viewforth now, I could turn left and I'd go for the doors and I'd climb the stairs to my office. I think I can remember that. But if you ask me to immediately remember, where do I go if the fire alarm goes off? What a day does it get they're tested? I might struggle with a bit of this. So what is the induction that we potentially are going to give to our employees who haven't been for 2 years?
Okay, so we're very much, as I say, we're very much working closely with the service teams, Councillor, to make sure any risk assessments reflect current controls around people who may, you know, be coming back into the workplace, because we have got a lot of people who haven't gone away, and you've got returners who are coming back in. The expectation being that the service management teams will sit and take that member of staff or those groups of staff through that risk assessment process again to say, look, here are the current controls, here's where the building you're coming into, here's what's expected of you. So because things have changed a wee bit since we've came through, you know, we're getting people to sign in a bit more frequently now around, you know, the spot check, the QR codes, making sure they're doing the QR codes, making sure they're signing the fire registers and so forth when they're actually in the building. likes of fire risk assessments and so forth, I believe that's business as usual. So where they were before, they will remain again. But if there are any changes, I know there are building user groups taking place through Tracy's team. And I know those are just highlighting some of the aspects to make sure that, you know, fire, first aid, evacuation and so forth are still in place. So I believe there was certainly some information from the governance team around making sure there was a risk assessment in place for particular yourself, like councillors going back into Old Viewforth. So I can't speak for somebody else, but I'm not sure that would have probably been forwarded on to you. So I don't know, the expectation there would have been, did somebody take you through that? Were you aware of that risk assessment and before you go back into Old Viewforth and so forth? So I hope that gives a wee bit of guidance as to what health and safety would expect. I can't really say what you've had because I'm not aware of that yet. So.
Okay. Did you have a second? Is that your finish there, Alistair?
Well, yeah, just one other thing. I think, okay, Chair, we should emphasise our total rejection of abuse for our staff, and that was mentioned by Norman there. So please, could we do that today as the panel, that we do not accept verbal or physical assault on our staff?
Yes, absolutely, categorically. And there was a report out today. I can't remember what sector it was in, but it was reports of increasing verbal abuse to staff, and there's been quite a lot of moves made recently in terms of the shop workers and the extra legislation for protection of shop workers, and the rise of that as well. So yes, no, absolutely, to reaffirm that from our point of view, 100%. Thank you for that, Alistair. I'm just checking the hands. We've got a wee queue of hands here, Douglas, but you were next.
Excuse me.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've got 2 points, but I'll just reiterate what Alistair said. With the rise of verbal abuse and possibly assault on our staff, I mean, it's down to the individual. I'm sure that whether they want to get the police involved. But have we got any number of incidents whereby the police actually do get involved and actually take some form of retribution action against the offender? Because I'd hate to think that our staff are getting abused, and I'm sure we are encouraging them to report it to the police. A lot of them don't want to report it to the police because obviously they might fear reprisals. And obviously if there's a subsequent court proceedings as a result of that, they probably don't want to go to court and give evidence. So we just make sure, you know, as Alistair said, we shouldn't be allowing it to happen, and we need to make sure that our staff feel confident that we will support them if they want to go and report it to the police.
Yeah, that's very much the case at service level meetings as well. That gets reiterated, Councillor. And I know not all of them go to the police, but where they are of a serious nature, I know there are management teams getting the police involved to make sure that bit's covered off, and then the following and then support around the people or groups involved takes place within service.
Thank you, Norman. That's fine. Okay, my question is 2.15 on page 9. The spot checks have highlighted some common themes for improvement, and these are being highlighted. What are the common themes, please? Okay,
common themes are what we've got quite well nailed down is we've got service level COVID assessments. You know, COVID assessment controls outlined in risk assessment. There is a separate assessment around the building, which captures, and what we call it, it's a COVID assessment secure assessment. So that basically mirrors what the HSE. So whilst we've got it at service level, there is some duplication there, but it's about making sure we've got it. So yeah, we've got posters, we've got QR codes, we've got gel, we've got sanitizer. You know, we've got enough cleaning within the building. What's the cleaning regime around that building? How often does it happen? That assessment is to capture that kind of wider information, which is based around the premise as opposed to an individual. So it's just sometimes when we go into some of the spot checks, we'll ask for that, and it's not always readily available at the time of the spot check. So what we do is work with services, councillor, to make sure that assessment is readily available to everybody that's within that building. And where it's not, that then gets taken forward. So it's not a huge issue because we know the controls are in place and we get eyes on all of that when we're in doing the spot checks. However, that assessment is really just a backup to just confirm, yep, we're on it, we've got all that. Sometimes that assessment's just not there. Sometimes the cost assessment for the gel sanitizer, because we know the HSE are quite keen to see what's the percentage level in that. Is there an alcohol percentage level that's enough, you know, to counter the virus in your sanitizers? That's another one. We've got the cost assessments, they're just not always at hand when you go in and say, can you show me that? So it's making sure those are shown at the time when we're during the visit. And staff, whether it's reception staff or teams operating in a building, actually have access to that cost assessment, so they're aware of controls and so forth around that. Other 2 seconds, I've actually got it on my screen here. I'll be able to give you a quick snapshot. There's not too many. Those ones were on the kind of higher end of it, but again, these are coming down because we're carrying out the spot checks and reminding people what's really required. Now let me see what other ones. Other ones, it's just about making sure that they've got office-based DSE assessments carried out and got that in place for their teams. And that's pretty much it. I mean, there's not huge amounts. There's the odd sporadic one that will pop up. But generally, it's making sure we've got the COVID assessments at service and people have access to them. We've got the premise secure assessment and people have got access to them. And making sure that anybody in the office and working at PCs or on laptops are making sure that their DSE aspects and they're aware of the fire controls and first aid responsibilities and evacuation points that Councillor Tollemache was talking about. That general awareness, because as you rightly say, some of them have been there for a while and some people are coming back into the workplace. So we're just finding a few wee foibles. Not overly concerned because we tend to get them addressed very quickly when we raise that with the management teams on site and service managers. So quite comfortable where we are with it, Councillor, but there's the odd wee bits and bobs that come up, but that's the kind of general theme what we're finding.
Thanks very much, Norman. That was well explained. Thank you.
Thanks. See, we've got 2 hands up. I don't know if Mr. Aljo was first or second or maybe wants to come in because it was the EIS survey that was out today. So it might, if you're aware of it, if you wanted to comment on that. But do you want to decide yourselves who should go first?
I'll just go first because it will be quite brief. So Daniel Aljo of the EIS Trade Union. Councillor Dodds actually asked one of my main questions was what were the sort of common themes that were picked up. The other thing that I was going to ask about was in the paperwork there was reference to trade union access to the Microsoft Teams Power App.
Yep.
I still don't seem to have access to it. I did get an email explaining the process, how to use it, but I don't seem to have been given any login details for it.
Right.
It was just to ask if that should have been out by now or...
Yeah, it's been circulated, Dan. So what I'll do is I'll tie up with my team member just to meet you. We're on the list, that's for sure, or it's maybe just a technical or a systems thing, but we'll tie up with you offline, Dan, make sure, because I'm pretty sure the other trade union colleagues have been given access to that. So Brian can maybe confirm when he comes on.
Right. Like I said, my other question was about the common themes, so that's fine for just now. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Can I just ask quickly, what's the Teams Power thing? Just very briefly, maybe not everybody's aware of it. I certainly don't know what that is.
It's basically it's just an internal Microsoft team system that we've got, Councillor, that records like risk assessments and health and safety improvement plans, so we can track through where services are with those. It was just making sure that trade union colleagues had access to those links to then go into those systems and be able to offer input to service levels. Like in Dan's case, in education, where there's maybe so you can go in and check up and offer some input within service level health and safety meetings.
All right.
So it's a monitoring tool.
Cool. Okay, thanks, Norman. Brian and then Aileen next, please.
Thanks, Chair. To say that the report, Norman, certainly full of positives. The increased use of the lone working devices, the reduction in injuries, the reduction in RIDDOR reports, and the increase in near misses. Given that we would obviously wish to see near misses reported more than incidents or injuries. Are you aware of any plans with regards to the warning markers? Obviously, that's something that's been rumbling on for quite a number of years. Are we going to have a warning marker system in place at any point in the near future?
Brian, in terms of that, I probably need to direct you if there's any customer service colleagues in that, because I certainly know that was sitting in that area of service for development a wee while back there, so I can't give any comment on that where they are, but I don't know if there's any colleagues on from customer service that will be able to offer that up.
Any indications? No, maybe somebody can get back to you on that, Brian, if that's okay.
There are a couple of other points, Chair.
Yeah, of course.
You touched on it yourself with regards to the lack of welfare facilities within Viewforth. We used to have a canteen in Viewforth and other buildings. Are there any plans to reopen those facilities given the increased use of particularly Viewforth? And also the individual risk assessments, Norman, you touched on them in your report. Has any work been done to make sure that all services actually have carried out individual risk assessments? Like certainly the GMB are aware of some individuals who haven't as yet received an individual risk assessment, despite having either high or very high as their COVID risk.
Well, it's quite tricky around getting that intelligence because they're confidential assessments, Brian, between line manager and said person. I don't have a drill down on how many of those are. What I can say from a health and safety point of view is there's been guidance delivered to management teams, team leaders and various levels within that structure and employees. So the guidance is there as to why, what would be required if an individual risk assessment was required. But I don't have any intelligence in saying how many we've got and where they are by, not at the moment, I'm afraid.
Okay,
in terms of the canteens opening up, I'd need to pass you over to other colleagues on this call.
No problem. I had to make do with a Twix at the vending machine, but I've no idea if there is a drinks machine in there. I genuinely didn't know. I don't know if there is a vending machine for drinking there. I could have got a glass of water if I was that bothered. But it's a fair point. Bruce maybe wants to come in on that from a FM side of things.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Gibson. It's Bruce Hickey, Senior Manager for Environment and Place. Brian, obviously, as we move towards that sort of hybrid working model and obviously more colleagues perhaps do return to the office or make that decision to return, we'll obviously have to review the Deli Fresh operation as well in light of that, in terms of the extent of the offering and obviously how we offer that service as well. That will very much sort of be balanced by how we return to the office as well. So obviously myself and the FM team are keeping that under review at this point in time, and obviously we'll report back in due course.
Okay, thanks, Bruce. Okay, we've got no other hands showing, so can I ask members for content to note the report? Yeah, five notes. Are we content to note? Sorry, 7 notes. Are we content to note those, folks?
Yeah, happy to agree. Thank you.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you very much. Then we'll move to item number 6, which is Occupational Health Activity Report, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's Kirsty Leishman, HR Business Partner. I'll just provide a kind of brief summary of the report. In relation to health surveillance, there have been 750 appointments from April 2021 to January 2022, and this is an increase of 3% compared to the same period last year, but it's a decrease of 47% in comparison to the same period in 2019-20. The reason for this is the health surveillance referrals that are taking place by telephone required to be undertaken more frequently, and as such, they're taking longer to close off. However, due to the changes in government guidance, Occupational Health have returned to face-to-face health surveillance appointments from January this year, which should allow over a period of weeks the recall times to start to go back to pre-pandemic levels and get us back in with our timescales. Just in relation to the DNAs for health surveillance, from April to January, there was 138 not attended appointments. And we've been doing a huge amount of work in terms of an analysis for reasons around this, which is kind of detailed more in the report. But what we're hoping at going forward is with the appointments moving now to face-to-face, that we'll get more of that engagement as well, but we'll be continuing to monitor that and engaging with services and individual managers just to review the reasons and make sure that we're picking up any kind of common themes or any kind of repeat offenders. In terms of occupational health, there's been 2,860 referrals from April 2021 to January 2022, and this is an increase of 26% in comparison to the same period last year. Moving on slightly, in December, the Wellbeing Programme Winter Wellness was launched, and we're partnering our council services with national and local groups and supports to provide expert information and support to employees across the council. So employees have been able to access training sessions run through MS Teams and access various online resources and NHS Forth Valley awareness sessions. We've tried to be mindful of the timings of the events and tried to vary these to allow for wider participation across the workforce, taking into account shift patterns and start and finish time of certain groups of staff. And some sessions have also been recorded to allow staff to watch them at times that suit them as well. So far, sessions that we've run have included topics such as menopause, male mental health, pension fraud, budgeting, and there's been a few sessions around emotional wellbeing. We also have more sessions planned this year around chronic pain, neurodiversity and breast screening. The feedback we've had regarding the programme has been really positive, and since the programme launched, 299 employees have attended 16 different planned events, and many have also been able to review the recorded sessions. Unfortunately, we're not able to keep a log of how many times that they're viewed, but I'm happy to take any questions on any aspects of the report.
Thanks very much for that, Kirsty. Douglas and then Alistair, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think I've raised it before. In fact, I know I raised it in December in relation to, on the paper, page 28, 2.5, the reasons for non-attendance have been identified. And we're not still, I take it managers are aware that, and I'm sure they are, that if somebody needs an appointment and they've made an appointment, they've got to be released from work from their schedule to go and attend to that appointment. I know it's not person, it's not face to face, it's by Microsoft Teams or whatever thing they're using. But I mean, we seem to be going back to where we were before, where employees are being unable to answer due to work commitments. I mean, surely now, after this length of time, you must make sure that our employees can go, and unfortunately, managers have to make that given that they must go to these appointments. We can't afford for members not to have what they require, and also cancelling appointments doesn't help because it just builds up. So I'm glad to see that you're onto it, because when you said earlier on that you're doing analysis and you're making inroads, and I just hope that we continue to make progress, because I'd hate to think that some of our employees are not getting the service that they want because of work commitments. Thank you.
Yep, thanks. I don't know if you want to comment on that, Kirsty, or just leave that as a comment.
No, I can comment on that. Thank you, Chair. I mean, in terms of that, we have been liaising with supervisory staff just to ensure that they themselves remember when we've got appointments scheduled, and we've been improving the process in terms of ensuring that they've got up-to-date diaries and things so that they know on a day-to-day basis who is expected to either physically attend the appointment now or take that telephone call, and to make sure that they're manned appropriately. But we've also been working closely with services so we can look at what they've got on a day-to-day basis to make sure that we don't book appointments on days where it might be more difficult to release the staff, but it's certainly something we will be keeping on top of and making sure that the staff get the opportunity to go.
One further question. Did the supervisors or the managers or the service lead, are they emailed separately, or are they told when a member of their staff has an appointment, or is it up to the member of staff to tell the team leader or service manager that they have an appointment? Do you actually notify the team leader themselves to say, look, Joe Bloggs from whatever has an appointment at 10 o'clock, please can you make sure that he attends? Do we do that or not?
Yes, we do that. So the health and safety team will collate the appointments, and what they'll do is they'll send on a kind of weekly basis to managers who in their team have got appointments and when. The employees are also notified individually as well, but the managers are notified too, so it's not the employee's responsibility to make sure their manager knows. We make sure that notification happens.
Thanks very much. That satisfies me a great deal. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Douglas. Okay, I think Alistair, you were next, and then Brian, and then Norman, I think, unless it was a point in relation to that.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Okay, on page 30, the COVID-19, I don't suppose there's an answer to this question, but I'll still approach it. When we look at the percentages of people who had positive, the tests, is a direct, the correlation between those who haven't been able to work from home and those who have, because I think that's what it looks like. And just a small technical thing in the paper, it says one person in the governance was the positive, and it's put 0%. Well, that actually can't be 0%. I suppose it's beyond the 1%. You can't do it, but it's actually a bit more than 0%. Anyway, so I don't know whether that work has been done, but it would be interesting to see for future developments when let's hope we don't get this again, but we might get something else again. We don't know. In that sense, that bit of work might be okay, the interesting to do.
Yeah, thank you. No, we haven't done a kind of in-depth analysis of whether there are higher cases in areas where we have more staff in the workplace. I mean, certainly when you kind of look at the figures, it certainly would appear that way, but probably the likelihood as well as some of these services are also quite a lot larger than other smaller service areas as well. And it may be that what we find is we don't necessarily always become aware of staff who do test positive, who are permanently kind of working from home at the moment. We do encourage staff and try and put the message out that you should always report when you test positive, but quite often there may be scenarios where if somebody tests positive but is kind of asymptomatic or is able to continue working, doesn't necessarily notify us, but it's certainly something that we could do a bit more work into to see if there is any pattern to that.
Okay, so the procedure is that if you're working from home, you are supposed to let the council know, but you don't think that always actually happens then potentially?
That is certainly the procedure. It should be happening, but it may be that we don't always have it completely accurate because the staff don't necessarily have to kind of phone in to say they're not physically coming into work. There may be occasions where we don't have the kind of full figures in that area.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Alistair. Brian, next, please.
Thanks, Chair. Certainly the GMB members fully welcome the return to face-to-face appointments. The feedback when there were telephone appointments wasn't particularly very positive. I'm a wee bit surprised, though, at the significant reduction in numbers of appointments for 2020 and 2021, given you said that when they're telephone appointments, there should be more frequent. I would have thought if there was a requirement to have more of them, by dint of being more frequent, that there should actually have been a significant increase in the number of health surveillance appointments for the last 2 years rather than a significant reduction.
Thanks, Brian. I mean, certainly, yes, we would have hoped that would be the case, but unfortunately, we only have a kind of certain amount of contracted time with PAM, and we have, where possible, managed to try and get additional clinics in place, but it has been more difficult, and it is difficult to close off some of the different types of health surveillance because they haven't been able to do that face-to-face element. But what we are hoping is that going forward now, with the face-to-face appointment, we'll go back to that normal recall time where it may previously have been a year or 2 years. It's been cut to 6 months. What we're hoping is that going forward, that'll give us the opportunity to try and plan in more appointments rather than kind of having to go back and revisit kind of same employees who've maybe only been seen relatively recently, and we would hope over the next kind of 6 months or so that we would see an increase in those numbers.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm not seeing any more hands raised. Therefore, could I just ask if members are okay to, that'll be a noting, to note in paper to note the report, the April to January report, please?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you very much. That takes us on to item number 7, which is the trade union workforce update from JTUC. It's a verbal update. Who's given that today? Brian.
Certainly from the GMB point of view, we have welcomed the opportunity to participate in the COVID spot checks. As Norman said in his report, they have flagged up some common issues, but where that has occurred, the services have tended to be very prompt at addressing the issues. I can think myself when I went to the second or third premise that was within a given service, and I won't name it, but they had addressed all the issues from the first visit that I'd been present at. So the services certainly do appear to be responsive to the feedback during the COVID spot checks.
Okay, thank you very much, Brian. I'm not seeing any more. Oh, there's one hand. Stevie.
Hi, Chair. Thanks very much. Stevie Ross, Unison Health and Safety Officer. With the COVID spot checks, Unison would just like to say these have been very vital. One was carried out this morning, actually. I carried out with Geraldine. I was invited along, and all went excellent. We had all cost assessments in place, which was fantastic. And this was down at waste. So these are vital, and if we can keep these going, much appreciated.
Okay, that's encouraging. Thank you. I think there's another hand come up, or has it gone down?
Oh, it's mine, Councillor Gibson, Lorraine.
Lorraine, welcome.
Sorry, apologies. I was held up in another meeting there, so I know my colleagues were in here, but yeah, the spot checks have been very useful. Just got to make sure that services are allowing reps to get the time to attend them, and obviously I've been having dialogue with Norman how they could work better, because it's not ideal that we only know the dates the week before. As I say, Stevie's our health and safety officer. He manages to attend ones and works well with Geraldine doing that, but I think we just need to make sure that we get better at coordinating that, you know, to keep the joint working going there.
Thank you very much, Lorraine. Yeah, I think that's probably been asked and answered in a previous point as well, but helpful to reiterate it. Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands up, but can I just thank Michael Grassham who put in the chat, it was the pharmacists. It was the report that was out a couple of days ago about the abuse being faced by pharmacist staff in Scotland, when we were talking about that. And I should say there's a report out today from EIS in Aberdeen. It's only out this afternoon from a survey that EIS Aberdeen have done, saying that 6 in 10 teachers are saying that physical violence and verbal abuse is having an impact on their health and well-being. And the EIS survey of more than 600 members in Aberdeen has found that 3 in 10, so 28.54%, have been physically assaulted in the 21-22 session. So some quite terrifying figures coming out then. So I just wish all the staff, management and trade unions, more power to their elbow in trying to obviously prevent these types of things happening, but also dealing with them when they do happen. Brian, you've just put your hand up there.
Yes, just really to come back in on that, to say that locally in Stirling we've got some excellent partnership working happening between ourselves and the unions in terms of incidents in schools, and with development work going on. We've reported here before about the way that we work together around incident reports as they come out, and how we feed back to staff and so on. So while it's an issue for us here, just as it is elsewhere, we have been addressing it very directly, and that work is ongoing with development of new guidance and just our response, our approach to managing incidents in schools. So we're very alert to it, and actually the increases are not as severe as they've been in the past. Some of our numbers are improving as a result.
Thanks, Brian. Yeah, that's encouraging. I know there can be challenges in the best of times, and we're obviously not in the best of times still for a bit. So it can only be much more challenging for all concerned. So just wish you all well with that. Okay, well that's the final item on our agenda today, and with the last health and safety panel, I think, of this council session, the 2017 to 2022 session. So particularly just to thank everybody for their participation and involvement in the panel over these years, and I'm sure the new council will have this or something like it in its place, I'm sure, because I think it has been a very useful forum. So certainly I'd like to see that going forward as well. But thanks everybody for participating. We've got one hand come up, Mr. Aljo. Do you want to come in just now?
Yes, it was just to say that Lorraine's hand was still up.
Thank you, Dan.
I can't see you on my iPad. Oh, there you are.
I'm waving at you. Sorry, it was really just on when we were talking about the sort of violent incidents and incidents there. There is a lot of good work going on in joint working with the schools, and that absolutely is. And I would say it's one of the more difficult service areas because the inclusion, and in terms of how we work with our young people in that regards as well. But we have got a way forward where we're easily to sort of drill down the dynamics round about these incidents and target where support's needed there. I would say, though, in terms of the wider service overview, particularly for frontline operatives and frontline staff working in terms of violence, aggression, whether it's verbal or that, I think we do have to, yet again, and maybe this has already been discussed, is look at a zero tolerance policy. We have a health social care partnership here. Health is zero tolerance. You can't try to integrate teams in that area and say that where one employer has a zero tolerance policy and the other doesn't. doesn't. I know we've had the Respect campaign, but I think it would be remiss, and none of us have been, you know, not given a thought to the fact that we're in a pandemic and we've got a mental health pandemic going on as well, which exacerbates that. And I do think that we have to do more, and we have to establish clear boundaries for service users when it comes to our staff and violence and aggression. A lot of other local authorities have established zero tolerance. We've got a partnership. The other partners there establish zero tolerance, but we don't, and I think that's something we need to work on in the future and establish here in Stirling Council for frontline workers.
Yeah, thanks. I know that was a point that was very strongly made and reiterated with certainly all the elected members on the panel, and, you know, endorsed by all the staff and trade unions as well. So we've made that point very strongly in the meeting today. So thank you for that contribution. Okay. As I say, that brings us to the end of this meeting. So as I say, just thank you very much for your participation today and over the years. And that brings the meeting to a close. Thank you very much. Stop recording.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay,
Bye.
Bye.
Thank